ora tātou, and welcome along, no mai, haere mai, to the first episode of Season 2 of Showy Ovaries! Woohoo! A podcast where I, perimenopausal, peripatetic, poetic and chic, Penny Ashton, little show tune for you there, confront the mysterious world of menopause and what it might entail before it affects my tale. A quick reminder that I am not a doctor, so as always, please seek medical professionals when seeking medical help. Though I can help you remove city mould from hydrangeas, which is a new skill that I've acquired. I've also acquired the skill of murdering many plants. Well, I'd say it was plant slaughter as opposed to murder, because I didn't do it on purpose. But I would take everything that I say with a grain of fertilizer around things like that. But it is wondrous to be back for Season 2, and even more wondrous is the fact that it is a live recorded episode from Bats Theatre in Wellington. So can I please get a woohoo from the studio audience? That's right. However, because these are COVID times, I am actually beaming in from Auckland. But that is a small, socially distanced crowd in New Zealand's red light setting there at Bats. But I'm so happy to be part of this festival that Dennis Lim has organised, the Listen to This podcast festival. So thanks very much to him. So I want to say hi to my fabulous crowd. Thanks for coming out in these bonkers times. As I said before, special hello to Sarah Connor, who runs Menopause Over Martinis. So look that up on Facebook. They've got great tea towels. You can talk to her afterwards or find her group on Facebook. There's also some great LinkedIn groups about menopause in New Zealand and various other fabulous things as well. So now, my guest today is the fantabulous actor, comedian, social justice warrior, doodler, chocolate eater, storyteller, director, writer, singer, diversity advocate, and brand new New Zealander, Sameena Zehra. So we're going to hear from her with some stand-up shortly. But first, a brief update on me. So I feel a bit like I've invoked some symptoms in myself by talking about it so very much, because as I drove from Auckland to Wanaka and back again around Christmas and New Year, I realised as I was sitting on my sacred lady space, aka my vagina, it was getting a little uncomfortable. But my GP was awesome, and so I have started on some topical estrogen cream called Ovestin. And I will keep you updated through my podcast in the VNN section, which is going to be Vagina News Network. Mm-hmm. My periods oddities have also ratcheted up a bit, and I've actually decided that I'm going to rename my period Mike Hosking. That's because it goes on and on and on and fucking on and won't stop when I want it to. So I have decided that it's going to be dedicated to him from now on. But enough from me. I'm going to give her a wondrous introduction later on. But first of all, I'm going to bring her up to the stage and she is going to entertain us with some stand-up now. So please welcome the one, the only, Sameena Zehra!
Well, thank you for having me on. Hello, welcome. Before we start, I just want to say how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's about 18 of you in this room, which normally holds about 60 people, 50 to 60 people. That's because of social distancing, that's fine. All that means is that you have to laugh for 3 people. Can you all do that? You can all laugh for 3 people? That's great. Obviously, if you want to boo, just do that for 1 person. But the laughs definitely do at least for 3 people. Okay, good? Yeah. Lovely, beautiful, thank you. You're already my favourite crowd. No, I say that every time, I don't mean it at all. I'm very shallow. I was going to talk about that thing of, like, I remember, I've always had quite a fine relationship with my body, but I remember the first time that somebody told me I was ugly. I was 6, and it was my mother. It's all right, she's wrong. Look at me, I'm delicious. But I didn't really care. I kind of think she has every right to think I'm ugly if she wants. I know we think that people are, all children are beautiful in some ways. No, not all of them are. There's some children whose faces will scare another small child. It's fine. It doesn't really matter because it's a bullshit social construct, isn't it? And I think it's okay for her to think that as well. Like for me, it was like it's a welcome relief from all those mothers or fathers, or mothers generally, who are like, oh, look at this thing that fell out of my vagina. Isn't she beautiful? She looks like Elizabeth Taylor and Cleopatra, and you're like, more like Jack Nicholson in The Shining, but whatever. It just never bothered me. Also, I was 6, so I was just a narcissist. So when my mother said to me, look at your ugly crying face, when you cry you look so ugly, go and look at your face in the mirror, I did. Spent ages in front of the mirror just making faces at myself. You remember doing that when you were a child? Super fun. waiting for the wind to change so I could stay like that and be scary my whole life, right? So it had no fucking effect on me at all. I don't see, I mean, like, if she had said to me, you're a liar, I would have fought her to the death, right? Because there's a moral failing there. There's no moral failing in being ugly. And I did. We'd fought each other to the death a lot. We're both clearly shit at it because we're both still alive. It's fine. It's weird. And also, I don't want you to think that makes my mother sound like some sort of very horrible person. She's not. She's a perfectly normal person. I too can be a complete asshole to her. And I will give you an example of that. Like, she's a practicing Muslim. And so she fasts during Ramadan. If you're not familiar, it's 30 days of fasting during Ramadan. And I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist since I was 9. You know, my family are very blasé. They're like, oh, you don't believe in God, but he does exist. One day you'll be sorry. It doesn't matter. It's a weird mix of liberalism and threat. It's fine. But my mother's practicing, and so every year during Ramadan, she'll fast. And at some point, one of the days in those 30 days, every year, she will, without fail, call me and she'll go, why don't you fast just for one day? Just for one day fast. Don't do it for my sake. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a religious thing. Just fast one day. It won't matter. What's the big deal? Just do it for one day. Even your doctor will tell you, it's very good for you. It's good for your body to fast. Just do it one day. Just do it for one day. For my sake. Do it for. And without fail, I will always say to her, damn, you should have called me half an hour ago. I have just eaten a bacon sandwich. Not just any sandwich, a bacon sandwich. Because I can be an asshole too. Anyway, that was a whole different... She's quite a robust woman, as you can tell. And I grew up around these very robust women, which is kind of cool. A few months ago, I'd called her up. She lives in India. She lives in Delhi. And I called her up and I said, how are things? How are you? And it sounded quite noisy. I was like, where are you? She said, I'm going out to have lunch with some friends. And I was like, you can't do that. There's COVID everywhere. You're in lockdown. She went, yes, we're very bored with COVID now. It's like, I don't think it works like that. I don't think it does. I don't think COVID goes, I'm so sorry for disturbing your social plans. I'll take the afternoon off while you have lunch with your friends. And she went, no, I can't be bothered now anyway. Anyway, you Westerners, you're very delicate. You Westerners, I'm your child. We do have, there's very different ways of dealing with stuff and other things, like the way in which we're brought up to deal with men, for example. Like, I found this, so my father's British and my mother's Indian, so I've lived between those two countries, and I'm British, but I'm also Indian, and I did my education growing up there. And I find this big difference, like when you get to the West, apparently, and this is for the cis-het Western men, those are the ones I can speak for, those are my people, they find it very hard to hear no. Apparently they don't like hearing no. And Western women have to be very gentle with them. So, oh no, sorry, I can't go out that day. I have to wash my hair on Thursday and on Friday and on Saturday and every day for the rest of my life. No, I'm very ill. I have leprosy. I can't go out with you. I'm going to a funeral. It's my funeral. I'm going to my funeral. I can't go out. In India, we're not like that. We're very much more robust and direct, and we just are. When I was at university, my best friend and I used to go clubbing, and we used to go to the same club all the time because we liked the DJ, the bouncer knew us, he was very nice to us, and we liked the barman. He always had our favorite drink, which was fresh lime soda, because we were very rock and roll. And one night we were just sitting at the bar, and we were having a very intense discussion, as only 19-year-old young women can. Very, very intense, serious discussion. It was about how many marshmallows you can fit in your mouth before you feel like throwing up. It's important to know this stuff. If you need to know, it's like about 25 of the small ones and about 13 of the big ones. Anyway, so we were having this very serious discussion, and this guy came up and he went, can I buy you a drink? And we were like, no, thank you, very serious discussion. And he was like, oh, let me buy you some beer. And we were like, no, we don't want any beer, it's marshmallows. And he was like, no, let me buy you a glass of wine. And we were like, no, we don't want any wine. Why don't you understand? Marshmallows, you don't understand anything. And he was like, can I buy you champagne? As if he escalated the price of the drink, we would eventually give in. So finally, my friend Miji got fed up with him, and she was like, look here, if you don't stop bothering us, I'm going to tell the bouncer, he will come and he will throw you out. You can keep drinking champagne in the car park. So he gave up on her. He looked at me and he went, you should give me a try. I don't know what that means, by the way. He said, you should give me a try. There's a reason my mother calls me Romeo. I know, right? There's a reason my mother calls me Romeo. So I said, is she hoping you'll take poison and die? And then, so mean, unnecessarily mean, to be honest, right? But he did leave us alone, bless him. It was, very, very robust, very direct. Anyway, that's me. Thank you.
Hooray! Excellent. Thank you so much for that. My mother once said to me, she didn't call me ugly, but she said to me once, she just looked at me and went, do you know you walk like you're up yourself? I know. It was like, yes, Mum, that's called confidence and ballet training.
Yeah.
But,
keep us on our toes, it's fine.
Yes. So what I've got now is I've got a bit more of a fulsome introduction for you. So I will do that and everyone can be awoken to the wonder that is you.
Is it full of lies that make me look really good?
Well, you wrote them generally.
Did
so
I?
There we
Did
go.
I? Oh, great. Yeah, it's totally lies then. It's absolute lies. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Here's the introduction. Sameena Zehra is an award-winning performer, writer, and director. Yep. She has performed her solo shows all over the world, from Edinburgh to Adelaide to Wellington, where she was nominated for Best in Fringe 2016 and won Outstanding Performer in 2017. Yay. Before moving to New Zealand in 2019, Sameena lived and worked in the UK, where she has performed a season at the National Theatre and toured internationally with the Royal Shakespeare Company. An intersectional feminist and humanist, Sameena's solo work has always been rooted, which means something different here, in the human condition.
Yes.
In holding power to account and in bringing people together. Her artistic direction was set early on during her university years in India, and she describes her work as a goulash of storytelling, political commentary, absurdity, and dark humour. She has used performance to work with victims of domestic violence and to advocate for refugees and asylum seekers in the UK. In 2020, she created The Magnificent Weirdos, an excellent named production company, making work with accessibility built in. She has a solo show coming up at Circa in August called Tea Time with Terrorists, which you should absolutely go and see. She is a childless atheist, just like me, and in a short time has made a very big splash in Wellington's artistic scene. So please, one more time, this is the last introduction, please welcome Sameena to Yeah. So now, how does it, to hear all of that, does that make you feel proud? I mean, you did write a lot of it, but it's still true.
Some of it is not written by me, definitely. But most of it is true. I mean, it always sounds much better than it is. And you always have to do those kind of things because at some point I'm going to have to apply for funding or, do something which requires me to sound much more magnificent than I actually am. So people who know take that stuff with a pinch of salt. But I have done all those things and enjoyed them very much.
That's that real self-deprecating thing where actually you have done all that and that is worthy of note. So just take it on board that you're fucking great.
Sure. Okay.
There you go. Absolutely. Fantastic. Right, okay. So now I'm going to ask you that question that I ask everybody first of all. You've already touched on that. We've already touched on your body. But what has your relationship with your body been like in your life and what journey has it been on, etc.?
I guess I've always had quite a good relationship with my body. I've always, when I've thought about it, that it exists, I've always been grateful for it because it does amazing things. Like hold me upright and still function in spite of the fact that I have treated it quite badly over the years.
And what way? What way have you treated it
Just
badly?
in terms of, I probably don't eat as well as I should. I was a smoker for 20 odd years.
Ah, right.
I don't drink, but I reckon I'd have been better off with an occasional drink rather than cigarettes. And when I was younger, I used to be very athletic and I still trek and do all that kind of stuff. But occasionally I do pass my bathroom mirror after a shower and look at my body and go, oh, I'm so sorry I haven't looked after you well. Thank you for everything. So on the whole, it's been quite a positive relationship. I don't really, somebody once said to me, is there anything you'd change about your body? And I was like, yeah, sure, of course I would. And they said, what? And I said, well, I would like eyes in the back of my head and extra hands. And they were like, oh, that's not what we meant. And I was like, but that's great because I could reverse without having to turn my head. And also if I had extra shopping, I could carry that. And they were like, oh, no, we didn't mean that. We meant like, do you want perkier breasts? And I was like, no, what am I going to do with perkier breasts? They're no use to me. But extra hands and eyes in the back of my head, fucking amazing if I'm going to change something about my body. So, yeah.
And your mother, did she help you with that?
Oh, God,
How did
no.
you come to be, that's quite unusual to be so chill about it.
So she didn't. But I think because,
right.
So my mother is an unbelievably beautiful, elegant, wonderful woman. And her whole family are very, very beautiful. But they also cannot pass a reflective surface without looking in it. They're constantly late for meetings because of that, which is fine. But I think from a very early age, there was a bit of me that was a bit like, what is going on there? And I didn't really care much for that. And I think because my mother was so obsessed with people's looks, it always felt a bit weird to me. So I may have gone in the opposite way, in a way that I wouldn't have had she not been so obsessed. Because it never made sense to me. Like when she said that I was ugly to me, and she said it in anger, she didn't mean it. She occasionally now, like she will still call me occasionally and say, I want to buy you a really nice outfit or something that I don't need, but she wants to buy me. And she'll say, are you still fat or have you lost weight? And I am a fat person, I don't care. And I'll be like, I'm eating chocolate right now in order to become fatter, in order to annoy you more. So this is our needle match that has happened our whole life. It makes no sense to me, that notion of thinking of people in terms of how they look or the cosmetics of their bodies or faces. So I've just never engaged with it, really.
Right, okay. Because there is quite a lot about that in Indian culture, is there not? Like that revering of beauty. And also there's the whole now, because I had some ideas around the caste system which were apparently wrong, because I thought some of it was linked to skin tone and things like that. And you disabused me of that notion. But like, which is good. That's why I do this. I want to learn things. So so has the Indian sort of cultural aspect played into how you feel about your body?
I think the cultural aspect exists everywhere. I think, that's a matter of patriarchy and capitalism and commodification of human beings in general, and women bear the brunt of that. In India, there are some particular things around colorism, like fair skin is valued, and that's a colonial hangover, but it's also partly a hangover of, which, Edwardian ladies had, which was that if you didn't go out in the sun and work, your skin was fair and unmarked, and therefore you were of a higher socioeconomic status. And I think that definitely exists. And there's a kind of difference between North and South India, where South Indians tend to be darker skinned, North Indians tend to be lighter skinned. So there's some sort of difference between that. My first husband was South Indian, and he was very dark skinned, and my grandmother was devastated by that. She's like, your children will be like coal, in her horribly, horribly bigoted way. And I was like, well, deal with it or fuck off, I don't really care. So there's something to that in the culture, but I don't think that's specific to Indian culture at all. I think that's just that's a worldwide thing. I don't think there's anywhere in the world that doesn't focus on beauty, whatever beauty means to them.
Right, okay. And what about around bodily functions and things like that? So how was, puberty when you were in India? How was that dealt with?
My mother was a librarian for a while, so she always used to bring books into the house. So I was very, very young. I must have been 6 or 7 when I first read about periods. She got me a very funny book, which was like, How Are Children Born? And it was a sort of a picture book, and it had 2 very happy-looking, massively plump people standing in a bathtub. I don't know why. It's the worst place to have sex. It's just a hazard. You're going to slip and fall. You know what I'm talking about. And that had some stuff about menstruation, and then it had all the pictures of the fetus in its various stages and blah, 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 blah. So I had a notion of it well before I actually got a period. So when I got my period, I knew what was happening to me, and it wasn't frightening to me. My mother's response to it was, hey, yuck. Anyway, but and it wasn't tampons and stuff at that time, it was just sanitary pads. My grandmother's response was to immediately start crying and going, you're a woman now. And for some reason, it was dreadful for her. And then I went to boarding school in India, and we had to go to the tuck shop and get our sanitary napkins once a month. But because the boarding school I went to was on a hilltop, and it was filled with monkeys, there were loads of monkeys there, they would, without fail, come and grab our plastic bags with all our tuck and also our sanitary napkins. And immediately, for some reason, they wouldn't open anything else. They would open our sanitary napkins and just start throwing them everywhere, which was quite embarrassing when you're 12 and 13. And it's a co-educational school, so there were boys everywhere, including the boys that we liked. And so that wasn't great. But then having said that, when we went camping, we went on camping trips, and we went in groups with boys and girls. And we had haversacks. We didn't have rucksacks in those days. We had those haversacks with very thin straps which could really bite into your shoulders. And we used to put sanitary napkins under there to pad them. And the boys used to borrow sanitary napkins from us. So there was a weird mix of sort of being embarrassed about it, but also being quite practical about it and not giving a shit. So it wasn't traumatic for me in the sense that I know it has been traumatic for some people. And then there are certain customs, and that's to do with the level of education or level of superstition, level of how conservative families and people can be, where it's considered dirty to be menstruating, so you're not allowed to cook food or go in the kitchen or stuff like that. That never happened in my family, luckily. But it does happen to people.
Okay, good. Well, it's certainly the first time anyone's brought up monkeys when we're talking about sanitary products. So I just want to acknowledge you for that in the first point. Well, my next question was going to be, so did you know anything about menopause before it came knocking?
I did and I didn't. As we all think we do know, like I thought I knew more than I actually did.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about it much because I didn't have to till I was in my 40s. But I had endometriosis for a long time, and I wanted to have a hysterectomy in my late 20s. And I was like, I don't need this organ, please take it out. And my mother sort of, in quite a nice way, introduced me to her gynecologist and said, talk to my OBGYN and see what she says. And if she says it's okay, then we'll do it. I think it doesn't make any sense. And I spoke to her, and she said to me, she said that I can't think of a sane doctor who will remove a major healthy organ from your body, so I wouldn't advise it. So I left it, but I wish I hadn't. I wish I had pushed it, because I ended up having a hysterectomy when I was 42, but they left my ovaries in. And this is confusing, because then I started doing research. But that was confusing because technically, menopause is the end of everything. So it's like when you haven't had a period for 12 months, technically that's when you've reached menopause, and everything before that is perimenopause. But I had a hysterectomy when I was 42, but my ovaries were still in my body, so they were producing hormones. So I actually didn't get to perimenopause, and the FSH the levels hadn't gone up. So I'm still not in menopause. I'm 53 now, so that's 11 years later. So I'm still in got to perimenopause about the age of 48 or so. So that was confusing.
Yeah.
But I did some reading and some research, and I thought I'd do it the natural way. No.
Did you get frustrated about the endometriosis? I find that interesting that you didn't when you talk about your relationship with your body, you don't bring up endometriosis, because that's quite a time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very painful and horrible. And yeah, I can't blame my body for it. I was very angry with the endometriosis, obviously, and I hated having my period. But it's also life. Everybody has some sort of, I know lots of people have painful periods and have much worse issues. So it's just one of the things that I had, and you just deal with it. For a while there, I was living on painkillers, like a serious amount of painkillers.
For every month?
Yeah. And so for 2 days every month, I was pretty much immobile or on very heavy-duty painkillers. And I only took the painkillers when I had to go out or do something, couldn't rest.
Right.
And then I had a hot water bottle, and I had all those other things that you do when you have that kind of period pain. It's like, so all the women in the audience are looking sympathetic, and the men are like, oh, God, I can't even. What is that?
I think the men, if they've come to Showy Ovaries, I think there's probably some good allies out there in the dude.
Sure.
So I would like to give you an acknowledgement to the gentleman for coming along to seeing this.
And good for you that you can never get endometriosis.
Yes, exactly. And this is why we need female doctors and female medical professionals who can empathize with this shit and just go, you'll just it's just lady stuff that your body is stabbing you from the inside out. So you were frustrated, you wish that you could have had a hysterectomy because you had decided you didn't want children.
Yeah, I knew I didn't want children. Although also people always tell you, you'll change your mind later. And I'm like, if I change my mind, I'll adopt a child. Don't worry about it. I can't go through something on the basis that 30 years later, I might want something. Fuck that shit.
So how did you manage to convince someone to do it when they did?
So by that time I was living in London, and I had a very good GP, actually. It was a woman. And she said, yes, it's endometriosis. And we had many, and she sent me to a surgeon who was a man, actually. And I was like, do I want a man surgeon? Because surgeons generally can be very condescending because they do think that they are God. Okay, never mind. I'll give him a chance, which I'm very glad I did, because he was fucking brilliant. He was very good at listening. He was very good at asking open questions. He never once said to me, are you sure you don't want children? Or anything like, he never once said to me, what does your husband think? All those things that have been said to me in the past about things like contraception and stuff like that, and have made me absolutely so livid that smoke has come out of my nostrils. He didn't do any of that, and he just said, what would you like to do? And then he explained to me the various kinds of ways the hysterectomy might happen, and what the contraindications were and what the side effects might be. And then he said, what do you want to do? Make up your mind, let me know, and we'll do it. And he did, and he was brilliant. And I'm very glad for that, actually, because it's nice to be able to say that about a doctor, about a surgeon, and especially about a male surgeon with such a very female-based diagnosis. So I was just very lucky. I think I was very lucky, and I think my GP was very clever about who she referred me to.
Fantastic. Fabulous. So then how did perimenopause start to manifest in yourself?
The first thing that happened was, I laugh now, but at the time, I was sitting on my sofa, just doing nothing, as I'm wont to do. I'm very good at loafing. I just want to say I'm quite proud of that. Like, I know people feel guilty about leisure, but I don't. I'm like, I will always do leisure before anything else. So I was just sitting, reading a book, nothing, and I suddenly started getting really severe palpitations. I did my pulse, and it was like some insane amount, like 112 or something, 115. And I thought, oh, that feels like tachycardia. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm having a heart attack. I'm going to die. Okay, maybe I should. I wish I had some time so I could put my affairs in order, because that's how my brain works. And I started writing a note to my husband because he was out, and I was like, when he comes back, he'll find me dead on the floor. Okay, maybe I should sit on the sofa. So all that was going through my head. And then also what was going through my head was, stop being so stupid, just do some yoga breathing. So I did. I took some deep breaths. And it took about 5 or 6 minutes, but it settled down. And I just couldn't understand why that had happened. So that was one thing. And then I started getting panic attacks, which is a thing I had never had in my life. And it was very frightening because I would be standing on the underground, and I'd be standing there, and suddenly I'd go, oh, I'm going to faint. And my whole body would go cold because I hadn't identified it was a panic attack yet. And I was like, oh, I'm going to die. Okay. And then I'd look around and go, who looks like a nice person? If I fall down next to them, they won't rob me. They'll take me to hospital. Because we're in London, you have to be practical. I never fainted. That never happened. I stopped being able to drive because of panic attacks, which was a nightmare because I love driving, and I'm a good driver, and I've driven all my life. So slowly, but I didn't put it together till I started getting hot flashes. And I thought, oh, hot flashes, I recognize that. And then when I went to my GP, she was like, oh, we need to do some blood tests and check what your FSH levels are, or however it is they check. And she said, okay, you're fine now. You're just on the border. You're about to go into perimenopause. So that's how I found out. But it can be frightening. And of course, once that happened, then I did a lot more reading, but there still wasn't that much available. And I think the more that we go on, like these 2 books that have just been published that I was reading about, both by somebody called Nikki, but 2 different Nikkis. I wrote them down.
Nikki Bezant and Nikki Pellegrino.
That's the one. Both of them have come out now. And there's stuff like that when it's so great to have access to that information, and from women who've been through it, and to hear sort of testimony. Testimony is always good, isn't it?
Yep.
So that was my rude introduction.
I feel like it's funny, since I started doing this just in October, the amount and uptick in menopause cover has been huge. And Sarah, that's out there with her Menopause Over Martinis, can attest to this as well, that there has been this massive upswell, which is great.
Yeah.
Because it's bonkers that we didn't know shit about this. Like, I'm still angry about it. I should get over it eventually. But I'm like, fuck you and fuck you and fuck you. Why did nobody tell us any of this? So your GP was great as soon as you went to talk to her about it?
Yeah. And then, and she said at the time, she said to me, do you want HRT? And I was like, no, I'm just going to take supplements and do breathing, and I'll be like really natural about it. Exactly like that, I said it to her. And then it started escalating, and for a while and then it comes upon you so slowly. I started getting fog. I couldn't remember things. That was very disturbing to me. I stopped being able to sleep properly. And I'm not a massive sleeper anyway. I sleep quite late, and I get up I sleep around 2 o'clock at night anyway, and I get up at about 8 or 8:30. But I used to sleep soundly, so I never felt tired. And then suddenly I was just like up all night. I'll be honest, that had mixed results, because I would get up in the middle of the night and my husband would just be lying there looking quite delicious. And it would be like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be like, how best to go to sleep? I mean, orgasms are very good for that. And I would just wake him up. And he was very amenable, to be fair to him. And so I ended up having a lot more sex than I thought I would. Because that's one of the things they tell you about menopause, is that your sex drive goes down. That didn't quite happen to me. I know. I mean, there are times when I feel a bit like, get off me. But most of the time it's like I'm up in the middle of the night. I'm like, oi, want a blowjob? And yeah, and the answer is always yes.
I love that. And you were like, I need to go on HRT now. And he's like, no, you can't.
But then when I came here, actually, the doctor I have here, who is a marvelous woman, and one of the things that she said to me, we've had conversations about this quite a bit, is she occasionally refers things to me, and then she says, look, a lot of research, medical research, is done on middle-class white men, so it might not be relevant to you. So listen to your body and make up your own mind. But here's the thing about HRT. And I was very skeptical, and I was like, look, I should be able to do. Because also there's a part of me that thinks menopause is a bit like puberty. Like there's a time of your life where your hormones go crazy, and then you get into a new phase of your life. And I'm like, well, I'm just entering my crone zone, the time that I will be a wise witch and all this kind of bollocks. And she was like, yeah, that's all good, but just try it. Just try a very low dose. And I did, and fuck me. The difference. Highly recommend.
Fantastic.
I mean, it doesn't work for everybody, I get that, but for me, it's been a godsend. Yeah, it has changed everything for me.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, is so often, I mean, because I'm epileptic and asthmatic, I'm all about, give me the drugs. Give me the Pharmac funded drugs that stop me having seizures in school assembly, and so I can breathe. And so I feel like I'm a bit the same about HRT, etc. And also supplements are expensive. Like the menopause supplement market is huge and it's expensive, and it's actually cheaper to get the stuff you can get from the government.
It is. I mean, I'm also a great believer in sort of complementary therapy and preventative medicine. And part of that is eating well and exercising and doing all the things to make your body healthy enough to deal with, give it the best chance. But then also there's a reason we have modern medicine. So fucking use it, you know. When I was younger, I used to get migraines as well. And I just didn't want to take medication for that unless I absolutely had to, because I felt like I'd build up a tolerance as well. And to some extent, that's true. So I think for me, it's been very much a sort of listening brief and trying to listen to my body and go, yes, that you can do this with turmeric supplements or whatever it is, but you also need this other thing. And you can do it with rest and relaxation and leisure and creativity. All these things are really good for me, are a big part of your mental and physical health, to be able to do all those things as well and not be on the treadmill of commodification forever. And lucky enough, I'm able to do that to some extent. I realize that's a huge privilege. So yeah, for me, it's a mix. It's a mix of those things, and trying to listen to my body and not give it crutches, but give it what it needs. Does that make sense?
I mean, yes, absolutely, because it's lost its estrogen. It wants some back.
Yeah.
So you're still on HRT?
Yes, I'm taking I've only just started taking it it's probably about 8 months ago now.
Right, and it made it just a massive... So that's quite late in the
Huge.
piece if you have been...
Yeah, it was. It took me ages because I'm an idiot. It just took me ages to realize, no, actually, I need it. And actually talking to this doctor who was so good about it, and also not pushy, and was very open and was explaining from her point of view why she thought it might be a good idea. Still not pushing it on me, but just explaining to me why.
That's so great too, because a lot of doctors, I mean, I've heard it from people finding it hard to get doctors to take it seriously and to actually prescribe it. And I'm a member of this other group on Facebook that's a massive global group about, and so many doctors are like, oh, you can't have it if you're perimenopausal, just people that don't understand. So I think it's fantastic that you've got a GP that knows, because also training for GPs in the past has been terrible. It's definitely improving. My friend who was trained in the 90s said, I got shit all, quote unquote, training for menopause. So that's good. So did your mother talk to you at all about her menopause?
No. Now, interestingly, my mother also had endometriosis and also had a hysterectomy at the age of about 45, but she went on HRT straight away. She's very much a fan of medication. Not just any medication, but, for anything that she gets. So I never really spoke to her about it. She did say to me that HRT gave her a new lease on life, and she would highly recommend it to anybody. But that's all. We didn't really... It's not a thing that we discuss. We don't really talk about stuff like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And have you found other women that you talk to about it, or other people?
Yes, I talk to my friends who are of a similar age or slightly older. My godless mother, my aunts. I have aunts, and I have people who are much older than me who are friends, who have been through the process already. And my mother-in-law as well, who's very stoic, and I don't think ever took HRT actually, but seemed to have a seamless menopause, good for her. So yeah, I had loads of people to talk to about it.
Great.
And I'm not a shy person. I wasn't.
No shit.
My friends are not shy. So I guess I was lucky to have a community around me that was able to express themselves and talk about it. And also in India, this is the thing about Indian people. I don't want to make huge generalizations, but culturally speaking, people are quite, on the one hand, very, very private. On the other hand, really have no boundaries. So will quite weirdly say things to you that you're like, oh, I don't know that you who I've met once should be having this conversation with me. But we'll say things like, oh, you know, you could look so beautiful, but you're quite old now. You have reached menopause. Doesn't matter. You're old lady now, but all old ladies go through this. Don't worry, it's fine. And then we'll give you like the whole A to Z of everything that ever happened inside their vagina and cervix for the last 10 years. So it's a weird mix of sort of like being, and especially when women get together, there's a lot of like that cohesion of women and older women and younger women being together, and you just have to listen to older women. You have to have respect for them and just listen to them, even if you're rolling your eyes. So you sort of absorb stuff because they're just talking at you your whole life.
Right. Okay. And is there like, so, you know, some cultures other than Western culture have more respect for elderly and older women, and I've talked to some Māori ladies who have talked about that, you know, it doesn't have the same negativity to it around aging. So is there something around the cultural aspect for you as well with that?
I think there is. I mean, I don't know that I would culturally describe myself particularly as traditional Indian because I'm British as well, and I grew up in a very liberal family, and there was an emphasis on education and science rather than myth and superstition. So it was not a typically conservative family, but there is still that. Yeah, there is a sort of like older people are wise. Sometimes they clearly are not, but you just have to indulge them. That's the fiction that everybody plays with. And there is that notion of respecting elders enough to just listen to them and be respectful when they're talking. And so you end up absorbing stuff. And age is seen as a progression, which is a good progression, not necessarily a bad progression. Having said that, for people like my grandmother, my age is a source of great sadness for her because I don't have any children. And she's like, you are wasted. You're a wasted woman. I'm like, if you mean wasted, I've had a lot of dope, then yeah. But other than that, I don't really feel wasted. And she doesn't say it to be nasty. She genuinely feels, and that's her internalized assessment of what a woman should be. So that's sadder for her than it is for me. But she does sometimes just look at me and go, so beautiful, but wasted, just wasted. Which is quite funny, to be fair.
I thought it was like my dad was like that. He would just, like, he got this baby. He found a baby at a party. My sister and I were having a party, and there was a baby there. My sister's friend had bought a kid. Obviously, I'm very maternal as well. And Dad picked up this baby and was just carrying it around. And then he just walked up to me in this group, and I was like, what are you doing? And he just looked at me and he said, at this rate, I'm destined to be grandfather of fucking nothing. It's just like, what is happening? I think I had just turned like 30 or something at that stage. And I was like, what? So thankfully my sister has bred, which removes some of the pressure on me. But yes, I think it's because our parents and our grandparents, they had children. So they don't understand this urge that some of us don't want them.
I think also, I mean, we talked about my father as well. Like, that is very mild what your father did. My father, on the other hand, whole different story. And now that I've said that, I kind of have to say it. I'll just tell you very quickly. I don't have a great relationship with my father. He's an absolute maniac. But I still see him occasionally because my stepmother is lovely and we're very close and we get along. And many years ago, about 20 years ago, we were having lunch together and my father said to me, well, why haven't you had a child? And I was like, I don't want a child, stop it. And he said, well, but if you don't have a child, because I'm his only child, my line will end. Which is just the most egotistical bullshit I've ever heard. So I said, so what if your line ends? It's not like you're fucking Michelangelo, calm down. And then he got very angry with me. But then also he said, okay, anyway, now I'm going to ask you something and just hear me out. And I looked at my stepmother and she just shook her head silently because clearly they'd had this conversation. And then he said, okay, if you don't want to have children, that's fine. Just give me some of your eggs. And I was like, what now? And I looked at my stepmother and she just mouthed at me and she went, I'm so sorry. Because clearly they'd had this conversation and she had said, please don't say that. But he said it anyway. And I was like, what are you going to do there? He said, well, you know, nowadays you can have test tube babies. And I was like, you must be nuts. Never say that in public again. Also, even if I had my own child, I would not leave it alone with you for 5 minutes. What makes you think I'm going to give you an actual child? So then he got very angry with me and didn't speak to me for 5 years, which was super fun. And I could just spend time with my stepmother. So yeah, it's very weird what kind of like reactions people have to being childless.
To childlessness.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So now back to menopause.
Sorry.
So has it affected your working life or at all, or do you think anything around that?
I think it probably did for a while without my even realizing, because I was so sluggish and so forgetful about things. I had a period when I found writing really difficult because I couldn't concentrate. Luckily, that was mostly during the first lockdown. So there was nothing happening anyway. I lost things that I didn't realize I had lost until I started taking the HRT and I came out of it. Like sometimes when you don't know how ill you've been till you feel well again. And you're like, good grief. And I had like really swollen knees. So I found it difficult to climb stairs. And that then makes you do things like decide not to go out when you would normally have gone out, because you have to walk down 30 stairs to get somewhere. And there's all these little things that you don't realize until you can do them again that you've created barriers for yourself. So I definitely did that, but I only realized I had done that afterwards.
Yeah, wow. And so that would stop you gigging and performing?
It didn't stop me gigging and performing, but I've done a couple of performances, and now I'm quite blasé about it because it doesn't happen anymore. I have done a couple of performances where I was on stage, and in the middle of performing, I had a panic attack, and I was just like, I'm going to fall down now. I'll fall off the stage, or I'll sit down on the stage. But I've just gone from holding a mic to putting it in the mic stand and hanging on to that. So then there's a part of my brain going, shut up, there's nothing wrong with you. It's all in your head, calm down. And then there's the other part of me, which is just doing the gig that I'm supposed to do or telling the story that I'm supposed to tell. And there were like out-of-body experiences there for a while, which were very,
and it's
very
amazing
weird.
People don't realize, but what you can think about when you're on stage.
Yeah.
I'm doing a 75-minute Charles Dickens show, but I am thinking about, why has this reviewer not come? Why did this person do that? Why isn't that one fucker not laughing when everybody else is? That happens a lot. And it's funny because you've got your masks on out there, so I can't tell who's smiling and who's not. But yeah, you just focus so much on all this shit. And it's amazing what you can think about at the same time. But wow, that's really full on. I haven't heard so many people think they're going to die so often with menopause.
It's just my dramatic brain. I mean, I do absolutely. So the other thing about this, another reason why I absolutely love my husband, even though I very often plan his funeral in my head, is when this started happening to me and I couldn't drive, and I was driving somewhere and I started panicking, and I just said to him, we were on the motorway, and I said, listen, I feel like I might faint, but I think it's just in my head. So I'm going to start driving in the slow lane, but I'm going to continue driving. I refuse to stop because this is in my head, and I'm not going to let it control me. But in case I do faint, just take the car onto the hard shoulder, right? And pull the handbrake. And to his extreme credit, he just went, yeah, sure, okay, I won't sleep then. I'll just pay attention. If that had been me, I would have gone, get the fuck out of the car and stop driving immediately. But he's really good like that. So it helps having that support. And it's amazing how resilient you can be. Like your body can be really resilient when you don't have a choice. So at some point, he started doing all the driving. And then one time we were coming back from Edinburgh Fringe and we lived in Brighton, right in the south of England. And he wasn't well, but he was driving anyway. And we got to like North Yorkshire or something. And he said, look, I'm really unwell. I think we need to get a B&B. I can't drive anymore. And I said, okay, why don't I drive? And he said, are you sure? And I said, okay, I'll drive for as long as I can drive, like half an hour even, and then we'll stop. If I feel panicky, we'll stop. But I drove 7 hours home because I had to. And I didn't have a choice in that moment. And sometimes you can do that. And and every time I did that, I was like, okay, this is in my head. I can control this. But it takes a lot out of you though.
Yeah. And that's very impressive. And that, you're a strong person. Absolutely.
I don't know that saying that I'm a strong person kind of gives it a value judgment, as if other people can't deal with it in the same way, that means they're somehow weaker than me. And that's absolutely not true. It's just like I'm stubborn and deranged, and I'm not as good at listening to my body when it's doing those kind of things because I'm a control freak. But also sometimes it would be good to just sit down when that happens instead of going, no, I have to carry on. Just sit down and take a breath. That's fine too. And I think we just find our ways of dealing with it in a way that we can deal with and that we feel okay with.
And that's why knowing that this can happen is so important.
Yeah.
Because if
Of
you
course.
know that, then once you name something, you can treat it. That's the thing, until people are just going, why am I going crazy? But they don't know why, because no one's told them. So that's why also, and yes, you are a strong person, but yes, it isn't weakness if you need to get help with it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that we need to take all stigma away from, et cetera, et cetera. So do you have an end in sight, do you think, to HRT, or you're just going to...
So the doctor said to me, you can take it for up to... Well, she said you can take it for 5 years, they recommend. But I have patients who've been on it for 10 years. And I take that as a sort of carte blanche to take it for as long as I like and as long as I want. And so she upped the dose little by little, and it's still quite a low dose. It's 50 milligrams, I want to say, or whatever it is, 50. And it's called... I can't remember what it's called. Estradot, that's what it is. Other people take that as well. So it's only 50. You can go up to 100 on that, I think. And we'll see how long it lasts. And she said, if you want to up it, we can up it. If you want to take it down, we can take it down. I kind of feel in safe hands with her. So, we'll see how it goes. And I think I've also been really super lucky in terms of the doctors I've found and the people that I've been able to talk to, and the fact that it's that easily controlled by HRT, because I do know that there are also women who, no matter the amount of medication or the amount of therapy or the amount of help they get, it's still problematic for them and they can't deal with some of the effects of it because they can be quite bad.
The absolute spectrum that it runs is crazy. And also the length of time, it can be 6 months to 12 years. And that's the sort of thing that I just think is ridiculous that we haven't known about until now.
Yeah.
So I think we've talked about so much, but now we have my favorite out of the box segment, which is fun facts about menopause. I know it's maturely named Out of the Box. So, out of your box, do you have any fun facts that you could share with us about menopause?
I was looking for fun facts earlier. And I found, this is the thing about the medical profession, isn't it? Because I was trying to look at like ancient Egypt or, ancient India or ancient China, how did they deal with menopause and stuff? And I couldn't really find anything. And I think it might be because it was just a part of life, but also that their life expectancy wasn't that high necessarily. Yeah. So it wasn't, they didn't think about it. That's probably what it was. But then I found in the 1700s, so in the early 1800s and 1900s, firstly, there was some of the thinking around, and this is to do with monotheistic religions and capitalism in general, of going that women are cursed and they deserve to be, punished for whatever they did to Adam, because clearly he had no choice or whatever the fuck was going on there. I don't know. So it's part of that. And then there was an interesting medical view in the 1700s that women were ugly men. They were just ugly men. And so this was obviously bound to happen to them. So they could become like proper men. And I'm just guessing somebody who had a menopausal woman in their house who grew a beard, much like mine, just went, well, that's it. That's clearly it. And then I found these treatments. These were just some hilarious treatments for menopause during the 1800s and early 1900s. And there's some very nice ones, like mustard hip baths. That's quite nice, could do that. Foot bath, lovely. Frictions with stimulating embrocations. Sounds fun. Electric therapy, not fun. Opium also sounds fun. Can live with that. Cold water directed to the abdomen. What the fuck is that? The filtered juice of a guinea pig's ovaries.
What?
How did they come up with that? What experimentation was done? What was the peer review process? I don't know. Arsenic, ugh. But they did arsenic for lots of stuff and it never worked, they all died. Thyroid gland extract. Golf. I feel like that was just some man whose wife resisted golf. And he was just like, you'll recover from menopause if you play golf with me every day. What the fuck? And the last one, which is my favorite, is orgasm. Yes, I will take that one. Thank you very much.
That's marvellous, which you have definitely tried. Right, great. So is there anything else that you feel that you might want to talk about or bring up around menopause or yourself, or plug your show? Sure, go for that. Anything like that?
Nothing really. I just feel like I think women just need to stop being apologetic in their quest for their medical diagnoses and whatever they need from health professionals. And we are socialized into being timid about this stuff and not questioning authority. And I think we can do it and still be kind and still be nice and not wait till the point where we're so frustrated that we start to bring out our electric fly swats and machetes. We can just right from the beginning be, question and kind of go, well, I'm not happy with that. Can we talk some more? And just insist until you have an answer that you're happy with, because, we shouldn't allow ourselves to fade away. And that's what I would recommend. And if you feel like you can't do that for yourself because you're shy or because that's not your way or it doesn't feel right to you, find an ally who can help you with that. Find another woman who can. There'll be some kick-ass women in your life, or men or non-binary people, or somebody in your life who will help you with that, and just take that help and don't put up with it. Don't be feeling panicky.
Yeah. Can we have a round of applause for that sentiment, please? Absolutely. Don't put up with it and seek what you need. And can you please give us a plug for your show at Circa Theatre? Because I'm a publicity whore and I assume that all other people are as well. So pitch your show.
So the show is called Tea with Terrorists. And funnily enough, I did it in this room in Fringe in 2017. It's a one-person sort of comedy storytelling show, and we've updated it and it's turned into a theatre show. And I was super chuffed to be in Circa. It's amazing. And it is a story of how I ended up having tea with some terrorists. As you do. I mean, they were very bad at being terrorists. I'm still here. I'm alive. They were shit, frankly. And how my vicious grandmother made one of them cry. I know. He had a gun to her son's head at the time, but she still made him cry. Anyway, so it's filled with stories of... It's really about human resilience and how terrorists can be a hoot sometimes, just if you catch them at the right moment. So yeah, please do come along and see that. There's a lovely program at Circa the whole year. And I'll be doing something at Comedy Fest. Are you doing anything at Comedy Fest, Penny?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
But I am doing Olive Copperbottom at Circa Theatre myself in November. So
Yay.
Hopefully Zeta, Crommy, fuck up, whatever variant won't have screwed us by that time comes around, and people can come and see me do that there. Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, can we please have a massive round of applause for the fantastic Sameena Zehra? Hooray!
And Penny Ashton! Yay!
Thank you so much. Hey, I think you said my name, but I couldn't hear it, but that's fine.
I did.
So thank you so much for that information. Thanks to Dennis, thanks to Bats, thanks to Sameena and everybody there. Check out my website. You can go to hotpink.co.nz. Also, I do have a Patreon. So, if you're sitting there thinking, how can I support Penny Ashton in her podcast? You can head to Patreon, Google me. You can pay $2 a month, $5 a month. You can pay $100 a month. No one has done that. But if you wanted to help me out, to help me make this podcast, because I don't get any funding for it, but I just think it's really important to get this information out. I'm excited. I'm interviewing Alison Moore tomorrow. I'm interviewing Nikki Pellegrino next week. I'm interviewing Jiling Ching, otherwise known as David Bowie's China Girl, who was in Gloss. I'm very much looking forward to that. They're the ones I've got lined up so far for this season, and I'm really excited and looking forward to it. But I think that's enough from me rabbiting on. Check out my Facebook, check out Sameena's show, check out Dennis's wonderful MFA final project. Listen to this podcast festival, and I'll fuck off now. So cheers, thank you very much. Bye.